One of the Marvel characters with the longest history is James Buchanan Barnes, aka Captain America's former sidekick, Bucky. In fact, Bucky predates just about everyone except Namor, the original Human Torch, and Cap, who debuted alongside him in 1940's Captain America Comics #1. But from his humble origins as a teen commando, Bucky quickly proved to be extremely dead. And while some heroes would let a decades-long dirt nap be the end of their story, Bucky returned in 2005, all grown up with a shiny new arm, brooding eyes, and a dark, mysterious past. And over the last 20 years, Bucky's evolved from a shadowy outsider to a major part of the Marvel Universe, and a major force within the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But how did this kid from the 1940s transform from a sidekick to a memory, to a Russian assassin, to Captain America, to a solo agent, and finally to a team player? We're here to answer all those questions. And also, why did he wear a mask if his civilian nickname was also Bucky? Guess he's simply always been that cool. This is Marvel Recap, Bucky Barnes, the Winter Soldier, with a special shout out to the official handbook of the Marvel Universe research team for their help. James Buchanan Barnes was born in 1925, son of Army officer George Barnes. Bucky grew up at Virginia's Army base, Camp Lehigh, where he had some trouble making friends. After his mother died when he was 10, Bucky and his sister Rebecca were raised by their father, until he was killed in a training accident. And while Rebecca was sent to a boarding school, Bucky stayed at the Army base where his father's Army buddies agreed to look after him. As Bucky grew up, those friends taught him valuable military skills, as well as how to make some money selling contraband to the base's soldiers and officers. His skills impressed the base's commanders enough that a few months before his 16th birthday, Bucky was offered a special assignment. He was shipped off to England, where he trained with the Special Air Service, or SAS. And after a brief audition, Bucky met his new partner, Steve Rogers, officially becoming Captain America's partner. Also named Bucky. Or at least that's the modern version of Bucky's origin story. In the original version from Captain America Comics #1, Bucky was Camp Lehigh's mascot, until he just stumbled into Steve changing into his uniform. Oops. Maybe recruiting him was just easier than telling him to keep his trap shut. And in that same issue of Captain America Comics #1, Bucky and Cap faced off against the Red Skull, who would go on to become their greatest enemy for decades to come. Now you may be asking, why would Captain America need a sidekick? Well, as Captain America once explained, Bucky was his advanced scout, clearing the way during missions and doing all the shadowy things that Captain America couldn't be seen doing since he wore the American flag. And for someone who had trouble making friends as a kid, Bucky ended up joining a lot of super teams. First off, he and Cap teamed up with Prince Namor the Submariner, as well as the original Human Torch and his sidekick Toro, to become the super team The Invaders, a name which was apparently suggested by Great Britain's Prime Minister Winston Churchill. And then Bucky joined Toro in founding the teen team The Young Allies, not to be confused with the Kid Commandos, which is an entirely different team group that he and Toro founded, or the Liberty Legion, which was another super team Bucky assembled made up of superheroes from Timely Comics, the Golden Age comic company that eventually became Marvel Comics and began with 1939's Marvel Comics #1. Man, 4 super teams at once? His greatest battle must have been against his schedule. So what happened to Bucky after the war? We wouldn't learn until Avengers #4, where a newly formed Avengers team found Captain America's body frozen in a block of ice. His first words after defrosting were, "Bucky, look out!" which didn't exactly bode well for Buck. Cap told them that his last memories were of him and Bucky at a European army base, trying to stop an explosive drone plane from taking off. Bucky tried to stop it, but it blew up, sending Cap tumbling into the water, where he spent decades frozen in a block of ice. Bucky's death weighed so heavily on Steve that he considered giving up being Captain America, as it would be meaningless without his partner. But then Bucky returned! No, it was just the Hulk's pal Rick Jones, who apparently looked just like Bucky. Although, to be fair, Cap did just spend a long time as an ice sculpture, so some things may have been a little fuzzy for him. You know, like faces. But Rick made Cap realize that he could honor Bucky's sacrifice by continuing as Captain America, convincing him to run off and help the Avengers fight his old Invaders teammate Namor, who'd turned heel. And just like that, Cap was officially an Avenger. And apart from some flashbacks, that seemed to be it for Bucky in the Marvel Universe. Until... Decades later, the Red Skull was in the middle of bragging to a Russian general, Alexander Lukin, about his new cosmic cube when he was suddenly assassinated by a mysterious figure, leaving the Red Skull definitely permanently dead. Wink. Now, if you're not familiar with the cosmic cube, it's a device that allows the user to reshape reality to their thoughts. And villains like the Red Skull, Thanos, Dr. Doom, and others can't help but covet the cube's power, often while screaming about it. And while it may look like the MCU's Tesseract, that's a completely different and Infinity Gem-powered cube that the Red Skull shouts about. While investigating the Skull's death, Steve Rogers started getting strange flashbacks to missions with Bucky that he didn't remember. Meanwhile, that mysterious figure killed one of Captain America's former sidekicks, Jack Monroe. And Jack wasn't just a former sidekick. He was actually a former Bucky. You see, back in the 1950s, a college professor named William Burnside discovered a copy of the original Super Soldier Serum, the long-lost chemical formula that turned Steve Rogers into the original Captain America. And with the help of the US government, Burnside became an all-new Captain America, even undergoing plastic surgery to look like Steve. And that's when he met student Jack Monroe, who he recruited to become his new Bucky, injecting both of them with rediscovered serum. But unfortunately, the pair didn't realize their serum was missing some important Vita rays, and they started seeing everyone as communists, forcing the government to capture them and put them in suspended animation. They escaped several times, but Jack was able to rehabilitate himself and later took on the identity and costume of Nomad, an alias that Steve Rogers had briefly used when he quit being Captain America. But Cap soon learned that the mysterious operative he'd been hunting was Bucky, who responded by blowing up a lot of Philadelphia. It turned out Bucky didn't die when that drone exploded in 1945, but was instead picked up by a Russian submarine. And while he lost an arm in the explosion, they gave him a shiny new metal one, and mental implants to remove his memories, crafting him into the loyal Soviet operative, the Winter Soldier. As a young operative, Bucky trained with an equally young Natalia Romanova, aka the Black Widow. They fell in love, leaving her heartbroken when the KGB placed the Winter Soldier in suspended animation. And while it would be decades before she saw Bucky again, she wouldn't age either, thanks to biochemical enhancements inflicted on her by the brutal Soviet training program known as the Red Room. And in the present day, General Lukin had ordered the Winter Soldier to assassinate the Skull, and Cap's flashbacks were caused by Lukin using a cosmic cube to unlock Cap's repressed memories. Cap fought Bucky and managed to use the cosmic cube to restore his memories. Overwhelmed by the sudden knowledge of all the people he'd killed, Bucky broke down in tears, saying that Cap should have killed him. In frustration, Bucky smashed the cube, but he still couldn't escape his past, as the cube just sent him back to his old home, Fort Lehigh. The Civil War storyline saw Steve Rogers and Tony Stark battling each other over whether superhumans needed to be registered with the government, with Tony leading the pro-registration heroes and Steve assembling a ragtag group of secret Avengers. Eventually, Steve surrendered, only to be quickly assassinated. Bucky set out to kill Tony Stark, who he felt was responsible for Cap's death, and who had just been made the head of S.H.I.E.L.D. But first, Bucky had to steal back Captain America's shield from his old love, the Black Widow, now going by Natasha Romanoff. After he was captured by S.H.I.E.L.D., Bucky tried to carry out his mission. But before he could deliver the final blow, Stark revealed that Steve's final wish was for Tony to help Bucky become the new Captain America. Bucky agreed on the condition that Tony uses S.H.I.E.L.D.'s technology to make sure that no one can mind control him again, and that as Captain America, Bucky wouldn't answer to anyone. Stark agreed and made him a shiny new Captain America uniform. As the new Cap, Bucky teamed up with the Falcon, rekindled his romance with Natasha, and was forced to battle William Burnside, the Captain America of the 50s, who'd become convinced he was the real Steve Rogers. During the Dark Reign storyline, Norman Osborn created a new team of Avengers using former supervillains. This forced the new Avengers, led by Luke Cage, to go on the run. They were soon joined by Bucky, who offered them Steve's apartment to use as a safe house as they battled Norman Osborn's Dark Avengers. But it turned out that Steve Rogers wasn't actually dead, as the gun that shot him just sent his consciousness through time. And Bucky soon discovered that Steve's body had been revived, but with the consciousness of the Red Skull. You see, back when the Winter Soldier assassinated the Red Skull, the Skull used the Cosmic Cube to transfer his consciousness into General Alexander Lukin. And when Lukin was later killed by Sharon Carter, Steve Rogers' mourning lover, the Red Skull scientist and periodic ally Arnim Zola transferred Skull into a new robot body. Then, technology created by Dr. Doom was used to transfer the Red Skull from that robot into Steve Rogers' body. Bucky fought the Red Skull-possessed Cap at the Lincoln Memorial until Steve's consciousness was able to chokeslam the Red Skull out of his head. However, the Red Skull was able to transfer himself into a giant robot body, only to be taken down by the combined might of Bucky, Steve, the Falcon, and Black Widow. And Steve was sure that the Red Skull was finally dead. So we'll certainly never have to talk about him again. With Steve back, Bucky tried to step down as Captain America, but Steve asked him to stay in the role. Apparently, while traveling through time, Steve had a vision of Bucky's future, and he believed that if Bucky didn't stay on as Captain America, he could die. And Bucky was soon facing off again with the Captain America of the 50s, who was now leading the paramilitary organization Watchdog. He even forced Bucky to dress in his old sidekick uniform before revealing his plan to blow up Hoover Dam. Bucky was forced to shoot Burnside to stop him, although it later turned out that he'd survived. Because, of course he did. But at least he got a nice fake grave in Arlington National Cemetery right by Bucky's fake grave. Small world, eh? But just as it looked like Bucky was able to put his time as the Winter Soldier behind him, Baron Zemo leaked his past to the press. Bucky was arrested and initially fought the charges before deciding to plead guilty, saying that while he wasn't in control of his actions, the only honorable thing he could do as Captain America was to take responsibility for the damage he'd done. But while the judge ruled that he'd already served his time, he was extradited to Russia, where he'd been convicted of crimes against the state. Thrown into a Soviet prison, Bucky was forced to fight his way out through a whole gulag of prisoners with the help of Natasha Romanoff. The two flew back to the US in a stolen Russian copter, as Bucky decided that taking responsibility for his crimes wasn't enough, and that his redemption lied in using his skills to stop new threats. During the Fear Itself storyline, the Red Skull's daughter, Sin, used a magic hammer to harness the power of the Asgardian goddess, Skadi. Bucky led a team of Avengers against her, only for her to blast him with lightning, rip off his metal arm, and stab him through the heart. Looks like Bucky had caught another case of being dead. Until Nick Fury secretly saved Bucky's life by giving him the last dose of the Infinity Formula, the secret formula that allowed Nick Fury to stay young since World War II, as introduced way back in 1976's Marvel Spotlight number 31. Oh, and that Bucky that everyone saw die? That was a lifelike android, or as S.H.I.E.L.D. calls it, a life model decoy, that Fury used to inspire Steve Rogers to return as Captain America. And with the LMD buried in Arlington National Cemetery, Bucky decided to let the world think he was dead, returning to his Winter Soldier identity to work in the shadows and make up for the harm he'd caused over the years. Because there's no better way to make up for some shadowy Winter Soldier missions than to do more shadowy Winter Soldier missions. Bucky started teaming up with Natasha to track down 3 Soviet super soldiers he'd trained. But he soon discovered they were just pawns in a plot by Professor Ivan Kragoff, aka the longtime Fantastic Four villain, the Red Ghost, and former Latvian Prime Minister, Lucia von Bardas, who'd teamed up to destroy Dr. Doom. But while Bucky and Natasha managed to defeat 2 of the super soldiers, the third, Leo Novikov, proved to be more resilient. And to get his revenge on Bucky, he kidnapped Natasha, brainwashing her into being his operative. and forcing Bucky to try and assassinate Daredevil. Bucky teamed up with Steve Rogers, Hawkeye, and Wolverine to get her back, leading to a showdown at Bucky's memorial at Arlington Cemetery. But Leo had the last laugh as he'd erased Natasha's memories. And while S.H.I.E.L.D. was able to restore most of them, they weren't able to save any memories of Bucky, completely erasing her knowledge of their time together. And a heartbroken Bucky was left reflecting that at least she'd never know how much she'd lost. Bucky coped with his pain the only way he knew how, by forming another super team. This one was an all-new version of the Invaders, which was focused on fighting off an invasion by the Kree. During the original Sin storyline, Nick Fury brought Bucky and a team of other heroes to investigate the death of Uatu, the Watcher. They soon discovered that Nick had appointed himself the Man on the Wall, acting as a one-man defense force protecting the world against all alien threats. No longer kept young by the Infinity Formula, which he'd used to save Bucky, Fury would be dead soon. And it was revealed that the team wasn't actually there to solve a murder, but because Fury needed one of them to become his replacement. And when Fury died, soon after, Bucky took up the job as the new Man on the Wall. In his new role, Bucky teamed up with ex-S.H.I.E.L.D. director Daisy Quake Johnson, traveling to the alien planet of Merzibau, where he hooked up with Queen Ventolin, and even encountered an older, alternate version of himself, who ended up living out a peaceful life with his queen. But Bucky took a break from his man-on-the-wall duties to start infiltrating S.H.I.E.L.D. bases and investigating Kobik, a secret project designed to use cosmic cube fragments to reshape the world. He soon enlisted the help of Steve Rogers, who'd recently had his super soldier serum removed, leaving him with a 90-year-old body. So Steve passed on the mantle of Captain America again, this time to Sam Wilson, formerly known as the Falcon. This led Steve to the seemingly peaceful small American town of Pleasant Hill, which turned out to be a secret S.H.I.E.L.D. jail, where brainwashed supervillains lived out their lives unaware of their pasts. And all of this was made possible by Kobik, a cosmic cube that had gained sentience and had taken the form of an adorable little girl. And that's when some of the captured supervillains, led by Baron Zemo, regained their memories and tried to escape the prison. And Bucky and Sam soon arrived to try to help contain the escapees. But they didn't arrive in time to stop Crossbones from brutally beating up old Steve Rogers. And just as Steve was near death, Kobik used her power to restore Rogers to his super soldier prime. And while the combined might of the Avengers managed to take down Zemo, Bucky escaped the town with Kobik, who wanted to stay with him. Bucky agreed, but was a little uncomfortable when she asked if her friends could join them, only to discover that they were a bunch of former supervillains from Pleasant Hill: the Fixer, Moonstone, Atlas, and Mach 7. All members of the original Thunderbolts team. They joined Bucky as he went on the run from S.H.I.E.L.D., forming a new Thunderbolts team. They managed to keep Kobik away from S.H.I.E.L.D., while also tussling with the Inhumans, the Squadron Supreme, and Spider-Man. But they couldn't escape Baron Zemo and the Masters of Evil, who captured Kobik while giving Bucky a beatdown. Kobik tried to fix Bucky by sending him back to World War II, only it turned out to be a different World War II, one where Steve Rogers worked for Hydra. You see, when Kobik made Steve Rogers young, she also rewrote history, making Steve a Hydra agent. She tried to get Bucky to join too, but he refused, causing her to get so upset, she exploded into a rain of cosmic cube fragments. Returned to the present, Bucky was captured by Zemo, who strapped him to a replica of the drone plane he'd been tied to in World War II, because that worked so well before. And while it definitely blew up, Bucky was saved by his old war buddy, Namor. And so when Steve Rogers took over America as Hydra Supreme during the Secret Empire storyline, Namor and Bucky showed up to join Sam Wilson's underground resistance. But they couldn't stop this now evil Steve Rogers from using a reassembled cosmic cube to reshape American history, turning it into a Hydra nation. Or so it seemed. because Ant-Man had secretly shrunk Bucky down with the last piece of the cosmic cube, allowing him to enter the cube where he found the real Steve Rogers and Kobik, allowing Steve to be restored to a new body. He quickly defeated the Hydra version of himself, and Kobik restored everything back to normal. And Sam returned to being the Falcon, returning the mantle of Captain America to Steve Rogers. Unfortunately, one of the casualties of the Secret Empire was Black Widow, who'd been killed by the Hydra Steve Rogers in what had seemed like an accident but was now pretty obvious. But when two of her exes, Bucky and Hawkeye, found evidence that she might still be alive, they tracked her down, only to discover that she'd been cloned by the Red Room, using a backup of her memories, including those of Bucky. And all three of them were forced to battle an army of Natasha clones, although they were helped by some ballerinas and a bear. In the end, Natasha disappeared into the night, but not before leaving a note for Bucky inviting him to join her in finally destroying the Red Room once and for all. Bucky took a break from that mission to join yet another team, Strike Force, as they battled the Verdai, a race of shapeshifters from the Asgardian realm of Svartalfheim. And when the immortal mutant psychic vampire Selene took over the small town of Adamsville, Ohio, Bucky teamed up with Cap and the Falcon to take her down, with the help of Sharon Carter and the Daughters of Liberty. Bucky found himself teaming up with Hawkeye again after Hawkeye suddenly spotted Natasha in the back of a news broadcast in San Francisco. As neither had heard from her in months, they tracked her down, only to discover that she'd been kidnapped by Hydra, who'd neutralized her by implanting false memories to make her believe that she was an ordinary American named Natalie. They even brainwashed a man named James Gray to be her fiancé and engineered a child, Stevie, from their DNA. And while it looked like Hydra took out her family by blowing up her apartment, she'd secretly asked Bucky to fake their deaths so she could never know where they were. Bucky confessed that he still wanted to be with Natasha, but she admitted that some part of her felt that he took her family away, even if she'd asked him to. And she broke down crying, leaving Bucky to silently hold her. After Steve Rogers crossed paths with the Outer Circle, a shadowy cabal that had been secretly manipulating world history since 1922, he brought Bucky in to help unravel their mysterious conspiracy. In fact, their symbol was actually the symbol on Cap's shield, and the Winter Soldier had been one of their assassins. But when Steve and Bucky faced down one of the Outer Circle's leaders, named the Revolution, Bucky shot both Cap and the Revolution, taking Revolution's place in the Outer Circle. And in this new role, Bucky fought Cap and his team of invaders, Sam Wilson, Misty Knight, and Sharon Carter, who took on the codename the Destroyer. Oh, and Bucky also got a new and very stretchy metal arm. But in the end, Bucky's secret plan to take down the Outer Circle from within worked, with Cap and Bucky working together to defeat the group, before going on a fun run. Free of the Outer Circle, Bucky did what he does best. He formed another super team, a new version of the Thunderbolts, dedicated to finally taking down the Red Skull, who was definitely back. Remember that immortal mutant psychic vampire Selene? Well, she used her powers to resurrect General Alexander Lukin, who still had a fragment of Red Skull's consciousness. This team included Sharon Carter, aka the Destroyer, Red Guardian, and the Contessa Valentina Allegra de Fontaine, or at least a life model decoy android of her. But they picked up new members along the way, including Yelena Belova, aka the White Widow, and the Black Widow, who was now bonded to a symbiote spawned by Venom, named Sliver, also US agent, and Shang-Chi, Master of the Ten Rings. The team was able to track the Red Skull to Latveria, where they manipulated Dr. Doom into finally taking the skull down. And after decades of death, memory loss, intergalactic missions, and more, Bucky and Natasha find themselves in each other's arms again, finally. What's ahead in Marvel Comics for Bucky, Natasha, and the Thunderbolts? Well, they next showed up during the One World Under Doom storyline, where they faced off against Dr. Doom, who declared himself Emperor of the World and offered Bucky a job as head of his secret police. And when Bucky refused, Doom blew up the Thunderbolts' base, giving him 1 week to join him or be destroyed. Bucky retaliated by trying to take out Doom's orbiting nuclear missile satellite, prompting Doom to launch a missile at Bucky's birthplace of Shelbyville, Indiana. And while Bucky tried to disarm it as it fell, he's got a terrible track record at defusing flying bombs, so Shelbyville was destroyed. And Doom publicly blamed the tragedy on Barnes, announcing that a new Thunderbolts team would be his secret police, dedicated to hunting down Bucky and his crew. And their leader was a new Citizen V who turned out to be none other than Contessa. What happens next? Check out the rest of the Thunderbolts Doomstrike series and the events of One World Under Doom to find out. In the MCU, Bucky had a very different origin. Starting with Marvel Studios' Captain America: The First Avenger, where he grew up in Brooklyn with his buddy, skinny little Steve Rogers, whom he saved from bullies on a regular basis.
I'm with you to the end of the line, pal.
It was Bucky enlisting in the army that further inspired Steve to try to join the service, which ended up with Steve being recruited into the Super Soldier program. And after Steve became Captain America, Bucky's platoon was captured by the Red Skull, prompting Cap to disobey orders to rescue them. He found Bucky in a lab where the Red Skull had been experimenting on him. Bucky went on to join Cap's team with the Strategic Scientific Reserve, taking down the Red Skull's Hydra bases. Until, on a mission to capture the Red Skull's scientist Arnim Zola, Bucky fell to his death, seemingly lost forever. Or at least until Marvel Studios' Captain America: The Winter Soldier, where the mysterious but surprisingly familiar Winter Soldier showed up to attack Nick Fury. And when Cap fought him, he discovered the soldier was Bucky.
Bucky?
Although Bucky didn't know Bucky was Bucky.
Who the hell is Bucky?
Back in World War II, Arnim Zola had found Bucky's body, wiping his memory and giving him a fancy metal arm. And as Hydra slowly took over S.H.I.E.L.D., they used him to assassinate targets, periodically wiping his memory to keep him under their control. And when Cap, Black Widow, and Sam Wilson, aka the Falcon, tried to take down the Hydra-controlled S.H.I.E.L.D.'s plan to assassinate millions using AI-controlled helicarriers, Cap had to face Bucky again, where he proved he was willing to sacrifice himself to remind Bucky of who he was.
Because I'm with you to the end of the line.
And it worked, kinda, as Bucky saved Cap from drowning. And then he relaxed by going to the Smithsonian and visiting an exhibit of himself. Bucky next popped up in Marvel Studios' Captain America: Civil War, where Helmut Zemo used a Bucky mask to frame him for the assassination of King T'Chaka of Wakanda. Steve traveled to Romania, where Bucky had been laying low and buying fruit, and helped Bucky fight off the police. But he was also being hunted by King T'Chaka's son, T'Challa, who'd taken up the mantle of the Black Panther. And all of them were arrested by S.H.I.E.L.D. But in S.H.I.E.L.D. custody, Zemo used Bucky's Winter Soldier brainwashing to reveal the location of some other Russian super soldiers. Oh, and he also made him attack everybody. Bucky went on the run with Steve and Sam, who he battled for leg room.
Can you move your seat up?
No.
Before teaming up to fight Spider-Man and the rest of Iron Man's team during a battle at a German airport. Cap and Bucky managed to steal a Quinjet to escape to Russia to shut down those Soviet super soldiers, only for Zemo to reveal that Bucky had killed Iron Man's parents back in the 90s. Awkward. And this revelation led to a knockdown, drag-out fight between Iron Man, Cap, and Bucky, where Bucky lost his arm. Again! Cap and T'Challa brought Bucky to Wakanda, where he went into suspended animation until they could remove his mental conditioning. And that lasted until Marvel Studios' Avengers: Infinity War, where the Wakandans gave him a brand new arm, just in time for the Battle of Wakanda. That's where Bucky fought Thanos' Outriders with Rocket Raccoon, who unsuccessfully tried to buy his arm.
How much for the arm?
But when Thanos used the Infinity Gauntlet to snap out half of all life in the universe, guess which half Bucky was in? Luckily, when the Avengers managed to reverse the snap in Marvel Studios' Avengers: Endgame, Bucky returned just in time for the Battle of Earth. And he even got to team up with Rocket again. And after the battle, he also got to share a heartfelt goodbye with Steve Rogers before Steve went back in time to return the Infinity Stones. Bucky next showed up in the Disney Plus original series, Marvel Studios' The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, where it turns out he got a pardon for all that winter soldiering he did, on the condition that he undergo therapy for his PTSD. While trying to make amends for all those he hurt as the Winter Soldier, Bucky teamed up with Sam Wilson, who was struggling with being handed the shield and title of Captain America. Together, they worked to take down the Flag Smashers, a group of anarchists armed with a form of the super soldier serum. Bucky also took Sam to meet Isaiah Bradley, a U.S. super soldier that Bucky had fought during the Korean War and who was later imprisoned and experimented on by the U.S. government for decades. Later, Bucky and Sam had to battle John Walker, the soldier the government chose to replace Steve Rogers as Captain America after Sam turned down the mantle. But with Bucky's help, Sam was ultimately able to reclaim the shield and embrace the name and legacy. And while Bucky didn't appear in the Marvel Studios' Guardians of the Galaxy holiday special, his arm made a cameo, as Nebula gave it as a Christmas present to Rocket. Aww, it's like she gave Rocket half a hug. Oh, and an alternate version of Bucky appeared in the Season 3 episode of Marvel Animation's What If, entitled What If the Red Guardians Stopped the Winter Soldier?, where Bucky was stopped from killing Tony Stark's parents, leading to a road trip/car chase across the country, and a run-in with Bill Foster as Goliath. What's next for Bucky in the MCU? After a brief reunion with Sam in Marvel Studios' Captain America: Brave New World, he's assembling yet another team to take on a mysterious new threat in Marvel Studios' Thunderbolts, where his teammates include Red Guardian, Yelena Belova, and John Walker, among others. And that is our abridged summary of Bucky Barnes, aka the Winter Soldier. Want to learn more? Sign up for Marvel Unlimited to access decades of Captain America, Winter Soldier, and Thunderbolts comics. Read current and upcoming issues of Thunderbolts, Doomstrike, and Captain America comics. Available where your favorite comics are sold. Or check out the Marvel Premiere Collection of Captain America: The Winter Soldier, on sale now. You can watch the Marvel Cinematic Universe films and original series on Disney Plus for all your Winter Soldier needs. And see Captain America: Brave New World in theaters now, and Thunderbolts only in theaters this May. This has been Marvel Recap: Bucky Barnes, the Winter Soldier.